Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my 2018-2019 wildcard weekend predictions. Well, for the Fanatic, this week to end the year, last week to end the regular season, I went 12-4, which is I was really happy with that. It was kind of a weird week, especially with a lot of the games didn't mean anything. A lot of the games came close to the wire. But to go 12-4, I'm very happy with, and that to finish the regular season, I am 159, 95, and 2. Which, when you divide that up straight up, that is 62.6%. So, with this strong week, I got to right around 63%, which is my usual season average. So I'm happy with that. And I'm hoping now with another 11 games to go, hopefully I can get a perfect regular season Super Bowl record amount of touchdowns to interceptions, 11-0, to end the year on a really good high note for 267 games. But what a great playoffs that I'm excited for this postseason, with all the games that are on the docket, all the teams that are in the docket. The AFC from 1 to 6 have really quality teams, and all of them have their positives and negatives to them. And there's a lot of parity in the AFC that honestly, if you picked any one of those teams, I don't think people are going to be that surprised. The only one that I think you might get some, going, there's no way they're going to make it, would probably be the Houston Texans at this point. Because I feel like with the Houston Texans, they've lost Demarius Thomas to a torn Achilles, and they lost Will Fuller to a torn ACL. So basically it's DeAndre Hopkins, Kiki Hute, Ryan Griffin, and an offensive line that's been one of the worst in the league. And the defense, it's had a rough, last month of the season as well. But I look at the AFC from top to bottom, and I think it is a very wide open race. And all the games this weekend in the AFC side are going to be very intriguing and entertaining to me that way. When you look at the NFC, I feel a little bit different with that. If you look at, the Saints, they laid an egg against the Panthers. I don't think offensively you should be that concerned, even though I do think Sean Payton bold-faced lied to the media. He said before the week started, we're going to treat this game like every other game. Then why did you bench Drew Brees? Why did you bench him? Teddy Bridgewater, it's like, well, he didn't need to play. Well, then obviously, you didn't treat it like any other game, Sean. So I don't have that much concern for the Saints offense. I feel bad for Teddy Bridgewater because this was a big opportunity against the Panthers team that wasn't playing for anything. And he just looked absolutely lost, and they had no Alvin Kamara. They didn't really run the ball with Ingram. And he just looked, really bad. And I don't think he's going to get another starting job anytime soon, especially with that kind of performance to end the season. Though I do want to say to Saints fans, be a little leery of that defense, because though Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara, sat out and you could kind of put those on how the offensive struggles, that defense, all their starters were out there. All those defensive starters were out there for the New Orleans Saints. The Cam Jordans, the Marcus Williams, the Ken Crawleys, the Marshawn Lattimores, the Demario Davises, the A.J. Kleins. All those defensive guys were out there. And Kyle Allen had a career day. He probably had his best game as a pro and maybe his only game as a pro. And I would tell, the Saints, be a little leery of that. Because, you didn't have to win the game, but you didn't need to get decisively beaten and blown out through 75% of that game. So, that defense, it's been on a roll, but to let Kyle Allen do that, if you look at, let's look at Kyle Allen's numbers here. Kyle Allen, 16 to 27, 228, 2 touchdowns. He also ran for another touchdown. They put up 33 points. I'd be a little concerned about that because those defensive guys were out there. If they would have benched Jordan, if they would have benched, Lattimore, if they would have benched Williams, if they would have benched some of those guys, I would have felt better about that because then you could just say, look, they didn't care about the game. Sean Payton lied to the media, which really isn't that big of a deal. But Sean Payton lied to the media. He didn't treat it like a regular game, and nobody was out there, and the Panthers just beat up on a bunch of backups. No, the Panthers' offense was out there, and they did a good job on that same defense, which was playing out there. So I am a little concerned about that, just to put that up there. But then again, you look at the Rams. They beat up the Cardinals and Niners. That's not really impressive, not really important, not really significant. But they got the 2 wins they needed. They put up over 30 points in both those games. They just obliterated the Niners from the jump on Sunday. That game was basically over by the end of the first half. But good for the Rams. Look, Todd Gurley gets another week of rest. You have C.J. Anderson, who is a good veteran complement back, with Malcolm Brown being down for the year. I think those two guys can actually work together pretty well. And I think the Rams have some confidence going into their game next weekend in Los Angeles in the divisional round. You look at the Bears, and it is one of the most disappointing things if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan to look at what happened there. That the Vikings had a home game for a playoff spot against a team that was already locked in the 3 seed. They looked at the scoreboard. They knew they weren't going to get the 2 seed, and the Vikings couldn't do anything about it defensively or offensively in the game. I blame Kirk Cousins mostly for this. This is the $84 million man, fully guaranteed. He finished with 132 total yards. 132 total yards and a touchdown. By the end of the first half, he only had 26 yards passing. Kirk Cousins was supposed to win that game for them. He was supposed to make enough plays against a road team that, let's be honest here, remember, against Eli Manning and the Giants, they gave up 30 points on the road. Against Brock Osweiler, he had a career game and they gave up 34 points. The Vikings offense had way too much talent. You could argue the offensive line, sure. That offensive line for the Vikings has been in shambles ever since they lost Nick Easton in the preseason and Sperano's death before the season started. So you can, but they had Thielen, they had Diggs, they had Rudolph, they had Dalvin Cook. You have Aldrick Robinson there as well. You have a talented enough offense that you should be able to put up more than 10 points against the Bears defense that on the road this year has not looked, at times, has not looked as good as it's been all year. But I look at the Bears, consistent team. They finished the year with the number 9 ranked offense in points and a number 1 ranked defense in points allowed. Number 3 in yards. And this is a team that, look, they have a formula. They have Trubisky who can manage the game well enough. He doesn't need to be a Drew Brees. He doesn't need to be a Patrick Mahomes. He can just manage the game. If he doesn't turn the ball over, the Bears can be a dangerous team because they can control the clock, run the ball well, and they have been able to show that they can put up enough points with their defense, which led the league in turnovers, either by their defense or Trubisky. They can put up about 20 to 26 points a game, and depending on how their defense plays, they can get a couple turnovers, get a few stops. That should be enough for the Bears to win, some games, especially on the road. I'm not going to sleep on the Bears. I think the Saints would be the most intriguing matchup because they did not play them this year, and I do feel like that Saints offense is enough firepower with Breeze at home. They can put up enough points to win the game. But everybody else in the NFC, I think the Bears should be the favorite because you have the history of the season. They already played Seattle, beat them by 7. They get them at home anyway again. They just played the Rams at home. I think it'll be a little bit different on the road, but I think that Bears defense can travel and give the Rams a good fight. The Eagles, they're going to play them this week. See what happens there. And then you have the Cowboys, who They have a great defense too, and I think that's actually kind of a mirror game. But in that game, I'll take Matt Nagy and his creative offensive scheme. I'll take Nagy and Fangio over Rob Marinelli and Jason Garrett. So, and then let's see, Dallas. Look, kudos to Dak Prescott, career high in yards, 4-touchdown game. He made a phenomenal play to Cole Beasley, 4th and 15, to win the game. I didn't quite get why Dak played the entire game. Dak didn't need to play the whole game. I'll give you the confidence argument. Sure, he needed confidence to, beat. He needed the confidence to play against, the Seahawks. But hey, kudos to the Cowboys, 10-6. They sweep the Giants for the, I believe, second straight year. Yeah, they sweep the Giants for the second straight year. And congrats to Zeke for getting another rushing title. And now they have a big game against Seattle. You look at Seattle; they had a weird game against Arizona. That was way too close for comfort. I want to congratulate Russell Wilson breaking the Seattle Seahawks franchise record for touchdowns with 35. But he also got sacked the most this year as well. He got sacked 51 times this year, which broke his own record, which broke his previous career high in 45. So definitely, if you're the Cowboys defense, be excited about that you get to play the Seattle offensive line at home this time instead of being on the road where, didn't do as well. And they have Amari Cooper, so I do not expect the Cowboys to put up at least 13 points this time around. And then the Eagles, hey look, Vikings-Eagles, the Eagles gain the Vikings lost the Eagles game. Congratulations for winning the final 3 games to get into the playoffs. You had Nick Foles back there. He tied an NFL record that was set this year, also by Phillip Rivers, with 25 straight completions. Congratulations to him. And it was really no doubt. If they beat the Rams, they beat the Texans, and they were playing a Washington team that was basically a bunch of... They were on their 4th-string quarterback. They really didn't have any receivers. The defenders out there, they just let DJ Swearinger go. And it was just kind of a bunch of has-beens and a bunch of guys that really weren't motivated for this team. So kudos to the Eagles. They get a chance to be this underdog again. This time it's a little bit different. You can kind of get an underdog feel of how this year's gone. But also at the same time, I think a lot of people are going to look at the Eagles and say, look, they're the defending Super Bowl champions. So they've shown they have enough talent that they, once they get in the tournament, they can get on a run. So, there are my thoughts on all the playoff teams to the AFC and NFC. So, now time for my picks and thoughts on each game. So, the first game, the first 3 seed in the AFC at 4:35 on ESPN or ABC is between the Indianapolis Colts going to the Houston Texans. I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts to beat the Houston Texans this Saturday afternoon. And then the Saturday night game, a weird situation there. I thought that this game would have been on Sunday afternoon, late afternoon game. It's the 5-seeded Seattle Seahawks going to the 4-seeded Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks to beat the Dallas Cowboys on the road. And then on Sunday, in the typical 1 and 4:30 game slots, it's the 5-seeded Los Angeles Chargers going to the 4-seeded Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens here to beat the Los Angeles Chargers. And then finally, the Sunday night game on NBC the Sunday afternoon game. It's the 6-seeded Philadelphia Eagles going to the 3-seeded Chicago Bears. I'm going to take the Chicago Bears to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, stop my thoughts on each game. The Colts over the Texans. This is one of those things where I'm taking the Colts here because the Colts are the hottest team in football right now. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games. 9-1 in their last 10 games. I congratulate Andrew Luck for getting to 11-0 against the Tennessee Titans all time. Or 10-0. I think it's 10 or 11-0. 10 or 11-0 against the Titans all time. He played an absolute fantastic game. Besides really one pick six to Jayon Brown, which was inexplainable. But kudos to them. What a turnaround. A 1-5 start to a 10-6 finish. Job well done. They found a nice, solid running game. Marlon Mack did a good job. 908 yards, 9 TDs. He also put another 103 yards receiving. I guess not really anything to write home about, but he did a good job. And they have a nice little trio here of Mack, Hines, and Wilkins. That they have a respectable running game on this team. And then offensively, congratulations to Eric Ebron, who had a career-high 13 touchdowns. He did well enough to make the Pro Bowl, which I don't think anybody expected. Eric Ebron, especially after leaving the Lions, thought it was a bust to get there. He also had T.Y. Hilton have a great year. I also was impressed with Dontrell Inman, how he kind of came along at the positive year. But also for Andrew Luck, that offensive line, Quinn Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Costanzo, this was one of their better years. Quinn Nelson, Pro Bowl, I think left guard, Pro Bowl left guard. Fantastic job. He could be an argument for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't think he'll get it. He's probably going to go to Saquon Barkley. But this Colts team is a really good team. It's a really hot team. And if you look at what the Colts have coming up, they have they have 3 second-round picks they got from the Sam Darnold trade. They get their own first-round pick, and they're going to have $100 million in cap space. This team, all around, is much better than people thought going into this year. If they can, get some big free agents, they can, use those draft picks to fill in more holes. This Colts team is going to be good for a long time to come. And I think they may be able to get back to the AFC South dominance they had with Peyton Manning. It's a little bit different because I think the Texans are going to be around. But I do think that Colts team has that much potential around it. But you look at guys like, Darius Leonard, who led the league in tackles of 163. You had Anthony Walker, a 5th-round pick at 105. Clayton Gaylor's a strong safety, had a nice 89 tackle season. They finished the year with the 10th ranked points defense in terms of total points, 11th in yards. They were the 8th best rushing defense. And this defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus, if he can get another good year on his belt, I think that, again, he's getting some interviews now after Black Monday. I do think that the Colts, or I do think Eberflus can get a head coaching job because what he did with this team, well, a bunch of young guys, draft picks, no names, journeyman players, is really impressive. But I'm taking the Colts here because I just I trust Andrew Luck and this team's makeup more than the Houston Texans. Because the Houston Texans, remember, their 9-game winning streak ended against Indy at home. And then over the last 3 weeks, after that, they gave up a ton of yards to Sam Darnold and was in a competitive game that shouldn't have been against the Jets. They gave up over 500 yards to the Philadelphia Eagles, and against the Jags, it was one of those games where it grinded on Jacksonville, but it wasn't nearly as consistent or impressive as I thought it should have been, just through the whole game. True, it was a 17-point game, but Jalen Ramsey had a big pick, and it was really Deshaun Watson's feet, and also all the punishment he took from the Jacksonville defense, which is a little concerning to me. I look at the Texans here. Bill O'Brien has a weird history on this, first game slate. The last 2 times this has happened, he got shut out by the Chiefs, and then he beat the Raiders with Connor Cook as their quarterback 2 years ago. The last time they were in this big slot, both games at home, by the way. Bill O'Brien, as weird as this, Bill O'Brien only has 1 career playoff victory, going against a team that I look from top to bottom is more consistent at this point. They have a better defense. And I just think, again, Andrew Luck and the Colts should be able to, collectively as a unit, be able to get after Deshaun Watson. They'll be able to get some stops. They have Malik Hooker. They have Kenny Moore. They have some secondary guys in there that can play decently with how good this defense is at tackling. And I just have confidence in the Colts that in this situation, Luck knows what this situation is. And I know guys like Watt and Hopkins, they've been in these playoff games before for Houston for years. They know the environment. They know being at home. But at the same time, remember their home wins were against the Bengals. When they played a competent Chief team, they got shut out. And when they played, try to think here. No, okay, O'Brien beat the Texans. No. Texans. Yeah, Bill O'Brien has had really, 2 home games. And one he got shut out in, and the other one was against a 4th-string quarterback. This team is more of that Kansas City type team. I think they're actually a little bit better. All around, kind of a similar story. Chiefs have the second best. They have a 10-game winning streak. The Colts have won 9 of 10. So these are kind of similar teams. And I'm just going to trust the Indianapolis Colts. Andrew Luck will make more plays, and this Colts defense will get a few more stops or give one big turnover that gives the Colts this victory. So that's why I have the Colts to beat the Texans. Next game, the Seahawks over the Cowboys. I'm taking Seattle here because Russell Wilson, in his career, has a pretty impressive record against the Cowboys in general. Going back to his rookie year, Russell Wilson is, I believe, he's 4-1 against the Cowboys all time. He's never lost. He's won the last 2 games against Dak this year and in Week 16 last year where they knocked the Cowboys out of the playoffs. And also, it's just one of those things where I feel like with Seattle, they have more of a dynamic offense in this situation. Because I feel like, again, I know you have Zeke. And I know Zeke, like I said, he won the rushing title. He got rested for another week. Good for him. But I look at Dallas and go, again, if you shut down Amari Cooper, I think that you have a good chance to, compete against the rest of the Cowboys' offense. Because this Blake Jarwin phenomenon, I'm not really buying it. Blake Jarwin, I know people are going to say, well, he had 3 touchdowns. Became the first tight end since 1970. I think it was Billy Joe something. That had 3 touchdowns in a game. Jason Witten never had that in his entire career. And I know what, other Cowboy fans are going to say, well, look at Dak. He threw for a career high. He got 4 touchdowns. He's the first quarterback in NFL history to, have 20 passing TDs and at least 5 rushing TDs in his first 3 seasons. And statistically, nobody's ever, had better numbers than Dak Prescott in terms of completion percentage. Yeah, but again, you're playing you're in the postseason now. And for the first time in Dak's career in the postseason, or for the first time, Dak has more expectations for this Cowboy team than the Seahawks do of Russell Wilson. Nobody thought the Seahawks, after Earl Thomas got injured, Cam Chancellor basically had to retire. Sherman left. Averill retired. Nobody thought the Seattle team was going to be either A, competitive, B, respectable, C, a playoff team, and D, a 10-win team. Nobody thought the Seattle team was going to be this good with that many moving pieces, differently. And it really all started after they lost to the Bears. They really were running the ball the first couple games, but then they finally dedicated themselves to the run. They have the number one rushing offense in the NFL, which is really impressive. They've run for over, if I can look here, let me see here. If you look at a lot of these results here, they've ran for like over 160 yards in like 7 of their last 8 games. Like, they've been on a dominant running tear. Like, they're kind of like Baltimore ever since they took over for Lamar. They've done it longer. And I look at Seattle. I look at how they're able to run the offense. I feel like, again, Russell Wilson and that offense can make more plays. Does Dallas have the better offensive line? Sure, they do. It isn't as good as their 2014 year or 2016 year because you don't have Travis Frederick due to his cancer diagnosis. Zach Martin has been dealing with a knee injury, and Tyron Smith's been up and down the entire year. And also, they just Su'a-Filo went down in the game on Sunday, and Connor Williams, their backup, not really that impressive. He's had a rough rookie year. But I know some of the Cowboys defenders look that they may get Tyrone Crawford back, which is significant. Sean Lee, who's been in and out. Leighton Vander Esch went down in the game last week. Hopefully he can play. He's been a fantastic rookie for him. But I just look at the Seahawks here. I trust their running game a bit more, and I feel like, again, they're going to try to pound Zeke. He expects to have the heaviest workload all year. I think the Seahawks defense will contain Zeke enough that Dak will, force him to throw. And I do not think Michael Gallup, Blake Jarwin, Cole Beasley, Allen Hurns, Deontay Thompson, I don't think those guys can carry enough slack in order to win the game. And I don't think Dak will be able to make plays to those receivers. Unlike I trust Russell Wilson. Because I know what some people may think, that looking at this video and say, well, you can do the same thing with Doug Baldwin. Yeah, no, that's true. But a lot of people, if you look at the Seahawks here, do you know that Russell Wilson this year has a perfect passer rating to Tyler Lockett? Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett had a perfect passer rating together when they hooked up for passes. That's insane. That was fantastic. Let's see. He averaged 13.79 yards per target. And he threw 10 touchdowns to him with no interceptions. So, Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson, there you go. There's the stat for it. 57 to 70 passes for 965 yards and 10 TDs with no picks. That is a perfect passer rating. He averaged the highest amount of receiving yards per reception. And that's according to Pro Football Focus. So again, you have a second good receiver in Tyler Lockett. I would take Tyler Lockett over all the Dallas guys outside of Amari Cooper. And then, I've just seen Russell Wilson make more off-script plays than Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's a guy who likes to tend to read, and they don't really run him as often, which I do not think they want to try against Seattle's defense because they'll take their shots at him. But that's what I'm going to take Seattle. I trust their defense. They're going to shut down Zeke. If you go back to the last game in Week 3, let's see. If you go back to that last game, Zeke had 127 rushing yards, but a lot of that came off one big run. But I would say most of the game they were able to kind of hold him down in a good way. I know it's one of the, I know another thought that somebody said, well, hey, look, they had Earl Thomas, who was the one that basically sealed the game for the Seahawks. Earl Thomas, but he's not there anymore. But I think again, Tedrick Thompson's done a pretty good job. Shaquille Griffin, that'll be an injury that you'll have to watch for. They hopefully will get J.R. Sweezy back. And I just look at the Seahawks. They have a better run control game. They have another playmaker in the receiving corps that nobody's talking about in Tyler Lockett. And I think, again, they're going to be able to kind of contain Zeke in a good way. And they'll focus on Amari, who, after like the first 3 or 4 weeks when they traded for him, he's been, kind of held down in check because people are focusing on him. And I'm going to trust Russell Wilson here to make one or two more plays that Dak Prescott will not make. And I do expect Dak Prescott to have one or two big turnovers that Russell Wilson will not. And that's how the Seahawks will win this game. So that's why I like Seattle to beat Dallas. The next game, the Ravens over the Chargers. This was a tough one for me. I'm taking the Ravens here, and I'm not being a homer. Let me just get out of the way, too. I'm not being a homer. I just look at the Ravens here and say, we've had a dominant history over the Chargers since we played them. We have a dominant history over them. I'm going to try to look here. Let's see. Let me look at the history here against the Chargers. Let's see. Head to head. Here we go. We're 7-5 against them. And we have we won 4 of the last 6 games. We won 4 of the last 6 games against them. And I just feel like, again, they have the last time. Let's see. Actually, no. Let me see if I can find it here. When? Yeah. So, really, the last time we've only had one home loss against them ever. In 4 home games, we're 3-1 against them all time at home. I look at this Ravens team, and I see a team that, since Lamar Jackson's been there, we've been 6-1 with number 1 rushing offense, number 1 total defense. He had 90 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game on Sunday against the Browns. And those runs were dynamic, and one of the most surprising ones, they were right up the middle, which impressed me. But you had Lamar Jackson running right up the middle, against a decent Browns defense that has a good amount of talent. I know the Chargers defense has more talent. But you're looking at a Ravens team that we know who we are. And we know how we can play our brand of football. And we just played this team 2 weeks ago. You can say it's a good or bad thing. I understand that. I totally get that. Because you could say, look, they know Lamar Jackson. They saw him play, and how they knew that they could have had the number 1 seed, and that revenge factor for the Chargers, that is significant, and I will acknowledge that totally. And also, the Chargers this year have been a much better road team. 7-1 on the road. They've had the most efficient team on the road all year. Trying to remember, what was their road loss? Oh yeah, it was in the Rams. So yeah, there you go. So outside of the state of California, the Chargers did not lose a road game all year. And some of those road games included a 16-point comeback against Pittsburgh and a 14-point comeback with 5 minutes to go against the Kansas City Chiefs. 2 solid victories. But I'm looking at the Ravens here, and I just think, again, you got a West Coast to East Coast travel. That's going to be a big factor. And I think that this Ravens team has confidence. They know exactly who they are. They are a running-based team that will pound the ball with Gus Edwards, Kenneth Dixon, Buck Allen, and Lamar Jackson. And it's just hard to defend this type of offense because there's no team in the league that has, a athlete. Maybe the only one you could argue would be maybe Taysom Hill in New Orleans, or maybe Trubisky, or maybe a Russell Wilson. They could try to play around that way. But how fast Lamar is and how we run with this team, it's very hard to defend. And that allows our defense to rest. And Wink Martindale has done a fantastic job this year. And he could get a head coaching job if he gets another good year in him. Or after the year ends, they could interview him anyway because they just think, if all that talent around him, he's done a really good job getting that number one defense. But I'm taking the Ravens here because I believe that we can grind out another victory. Because the way you can shut down the Chargers is by putting a good amount of pressure on them. And Phillip Rivers over the last 2 games has not looked very good. The team's had 9 turnovers in their last 3 games, and he's had, I think, 4 turnovers himself by picks. So I think going into this, it's a momentum thing, and also it's Phillip Rivers. This is a guy in the postseason. He's won his last 3 wildcard weekend games, but Phillip Rivers doesn't have the greatest of all postseason track records. You have 2006 one and done, 2009 one and done, and he's been out of the playoffs. I know the same thing he said, same thing with Baltimore. Baltimore hasn't made the playoffs since 2014. The Chargers haven't made the playoffs since 2013. So that's fair. That pretty much is equal. But I like the Ravens here because I think, again, we have an offense and a defense that can play the Chargers well because we can limit that offense time on the field. And I think with Lamar's athleticism, going with against Bosa and Ingram is paramount to making plays with his arm and his feet. And I think, again, they're trusting more with Lamar and his arm. I think, again, he'll need about 220, 230 passing yards this time around. I said 200, I think, last time, back in Week 16. I think we'll need about 220, 230 to win this game around. But I just trust them enough in this spot to pull this game out. It's going to be a fun game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chargers win. But I think the Ravens, they have the experience. They have the home field advantage. By the way, this is only John Harbaugh's 3rd home game in his tenure as the Ravens head coach. 3rd home game in 16 games in his postseason career. Only the 3rd time he gets to host a home game. Only the 3rd time. The other 2, 2012 wild card, 2011 divisional. Last time the Ravens hosted a playoff game, just be fair though, he won the Super Bowl. And the last time he won the AFC North, he won the Super Bowl too. So I do think the Ravens have a chance. I do think the Ravens have a chance because of that defense and because of our running game and Lamar Jackson. So that's why I like the Ravens to beat the Chargers. And finally, the Bears over the Eagles. This is one where I'm going to trust the defense and the home crowd of the Bears. I know the Eagles, look, they're all pumped up. This is 2017 all over again. Not as talented, a lot more banged up defensively, but they have Nick Foles back there, who's 11-2 in his last, is 9-2 in his last 11 starts. And in his career as a Philadelphia Eagle, if you take out in his career, if you take out the St. Louis Rams run, which a lot of people might give him a pass for because of Jeff Fisher. Just remember, last year, right? 3 of the Final 4 quarterbacks. Nick Foles, Case Keenum, Jared Goff. I'm sorry, 3 of the playoff teams in the NFC last year, not the Final 4. 3 of the playoff teams in the NFC last year. Nick Foles, Case Keenum, Jared Goff. They were all Rams at one point on the same roster just the year before. In Nick Foles' career in Philadelphia and Kansas City, because I'll add that game in too, the game he started against Jacksonville, he is 22-6 as a starter. So this is a guy that, again, in a Doug Peterson Andy Reid system, has shown that he can win games, and he has the confidence in Philadelphia to play well in order for the Eagles, to win this game. But you have to take the Bears here because this Bears home field advantage, it's significant. They only had, I believe, 1 loss at home the entire year, and that was to the Patriots. And I think the only reason they lost that game was they had 2 turnovers that were for touchdowns, and they were 1 yard away from tying that game even. But I look at the Bears here. You know what? The Bears defense at home has really made some quarterbacks look below average or pathetic. People will remember the Russell Wilson game, where he got sacked 6 times and he threw a crucial pick 6 that basically cost him the game. I still hate that play as a Russell Wilson fan, but he really just threw it to Mukamura and ran it downfield. Ran it right up the right sideline. Jared Goff had his worst game as a pro. He had no TDs and 4 picks, and he played worse than Trubisky, who had 1 TD and 3 picks. That was a 15-6 game that if Trubisky doesn't turn the ball over, they probably blow him out. You have that. They held Todd Gurley to, I think, 20 yards rushing, which is insane. Aaron Rodgers had a mediocre day. His pass streak was ended by Eddie Jackson in that stadium. Kirk Cousins threw 2 horrible interceptions, against the Bears. Darnold looked pretty, below average. And the Bears defense has dominated the entire year. They've dominated and controlled that team. And I just think that defense can carry against Nick Foles. I don't think Nick Foles is going to play that well. I do think the Bears are going to get a turnover or 2. If you look at Foles, last couple games, he's doing interceptions to the lead. He also threw an interception in the Houston game, or he also had a turnover in the Houston game. With that defense, who's led the league in turnover touchdowns and turnovers in general, I think if he has 1 or 2 of those turnovers, that may be the end of the game. I think if the Bears can control the clock, they have Howard and Cohen. I do think the receiving core will be an interesting matchup here for Chicago because Allen Robinson's missed the last game because of a groin injury, and I don't know how well he's going to be. Also, Anthony Miller, their third receiver, left the game with shoulder injury, so if they don't have him or Robinson, that's going to be significant for the Eagles' defense, which would be a huge factor there. But also, in this matchup between Nagy and Peterson, that kind of cancels out. Both those guys are KC guys. They know each other pretty well. They know each other. They know how to play, and both offenses are very similar, or are very similar in their designs and how they want to make plays. I do think Trubisky has an advantage mobility-wise, but Foles has the experience and the system edge for the Eagles. But I think at the end of the day, the matchup that I'm going to trust here is I'll take Vic Fangio, who I think I told everybody here last year on this channel, the coordinator to watch to get hired, or a couple years ago to get hired, was Kyle Shanahan with the Atlanta Falcons, who turned that job in San Francisco. This year's coordinator, Vic Fangio. That guy deserves a head coaching job. What he's done with that defense, what he's done in the league through San Francisco, and his entire tenure with the NFL, he's earned the right to get a head coaching job, and I hope he gets one. The Bears hope he doesn't, because I mean, again, he really helps Matt Nagy really focus on the offense. Yeah, but if you look at Fangio, he was the defense coordinator in Houston for a couple of years. Indy, he turned around. He also helped with the Panthers. He's been around the league with the Panthers, Niners, some really good defenses throughout the years that has been able to really do well. But I'm taking the Bears here because of that defense and that home field advantage and those numbers I put up with those quarterbacks at home. Do I think the Eagles have a chance? Sure. Like I said, you have the experience, you have this mojo, and you have this confidence in Philly, and I don't trust Trubisky to play well enough in this spot. Trubisky, has kind of been a weird manager, albatross, and quarterback for the Bears. He's made a lot of plays, and sometimes he hasn't made enough plays. And just of how he plays football, it's just not really that good. It's actually kind of weird because I see it as, for me, where, Trubisky, all he needs to do is make a turnover or 2, and then the Eagles can capitalize. Especially if he doesn't have that good of a receiving core, if Robinson and Miller can't go. But I'm taking the Bears here. Trust the defense. Take Fangio over Schwartz, and that home field advantage. I think the Eagles' run ends in Chicago. The Eagles shouldn't be ashamed. They made the playoffs. Nobody expected them to. And they got to defend their title, which for a lot of the last, or they got a chance to defend their title, which for some teams, that's hard to do after the year you win it. So, congrats to them. So those are my thoughts and comments on all the games this weekend. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube prognosticators as well. Guys like Geo Knows, Half Moon's Picks, Bridgewater's Finest, Billy B, The Waterboy Report, the Electric Stormanda Show, Cody Roy Parker, Keith Bailey. All those guys and gals do videos just like I do, giving their picks for the NFL season and the NFL postseason. So until next week, until the divisional round, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.